Good morning, everybody. Today I'm at Cwmorthin slate mine. It's also a quarry as well. It's this fantastic, devastating and quite eerie landscape. But this is an amazing place when you're looking for some inspiration or you're looking for something different to photograph. Today I'm going to talk about an exercise that I started a long time ago and I still do today, especially when I'm out of practice or I haven't been shooting for a while. And I think this is an exercise that you should do as well. It's basically a way of getting to know all of your three principal settings: aperture, shutter speed and ISO, how they work, how they interact with each other, and ultimately how they affect your photos. What I do is switch the camera to manual mode and then just play around with the settings. Now at the moment, the camera is completely overexposed. So I need to change aperture, shutter speed or ISO. So I need those readily accessible. I've got aperture on this front dial, I've got shutter speed on this back dial, then I've got ISO on this lower back dial. And that means I can access my three principal settings really easily. And that's the key to this exercise. If your camera only has two dials, just make sure you know where the ISO button is. Normally it is just on the side here, and then play around with those settings until you get a good exposure. It will take time and it can be quite frustrating, but this is the only way that you can really start to understand those three different settings. So I'm going to take a shot looking down these houses. So you can see it's completely overexposed. So I'm going to bring my shutter speed up so it's going to go faster. I'm going to close my aperture down until the photo looks good. And for now, we're just going to go with it looking good on the back of the camera. There are some more advanced techniques. You can use your histogram or you can use your zebras. But for now, I'm just going how it looks on the back of the camera. And that looks really good. So I'll focus at the end there and take a shot. And that's the principle of this exercise. It's about getting shots and not worrying about getting the perfect shot, but just learning about your three principal settings. There is just so much around here to photograph. It's a really cool little white hut over there. And we have those buildings that I was at earlier on over there. Now, there is a little bit of water there, and I want that reflection of that end building. Now with my settings, that last shot, it was 1/60th, f6.3, ISO 500. I wasn't paying attention to my ISO. I'm going to knock it down to 100, and that will give me a nice shot here, although the wind is rippling up that water, even though it is well protected. Now my settings at 1/60th, f6.3, ISO 100. So I brought my ISO down to control the exposure. That sky in the background was really bright. So first of all, I'm just playing around with those settings to get a good exposure. Well, that's a lot of whitecaps. That's a lot of wind. Wow. So at this time, it's really dark on those settings. So what I'm going to do is brighten it up. Now I can brighten it up by raising my ISO, but I don't want to do that. I'll keep that at 100. I can also brighten it up by dropping my shutter speed, but I don't want to drop that too low because that'll start blurring the image like this. So you can see it's blurry because I'm at 1/20th of a second. So I'll keep my shutter speed about 1/125th. So I'm going to open up my aperture and I'm going to shoot it somewhere there. We'll have to raise my ISO actually a little bit. There we go. So I'm going to focus on the house and take the shot. Then I'm just going to try a few different shots, keeping those settings. So I've got a bit of light coming through. I'm not sure if it's going to hit this. I don't think it is. Come on. Now it's completely overexposed, so I have to quickly change my settings to get a good shot. But that's what's happening over there. So you can see that light changed really quickly, and in manual mode, you have to make the changes. I very quickly dropped the aperture to f20, which is not an ideal aperture to be shooting at, but it meant that I got the shot of that bright sky over there. Just a shame the light didn't hit the building, because that would have been fantastic. I just love exploring. There's just so much to find. You can see here, there's these trees. It's got a walkway through it. It's just so fantastic in finding things like this. So fascinating. Wow, I mean, look at these floors. They're almost still immaculate, yet the building's all gone. There's obviously some old cooker in there, or old fireplace, or a range cooker or something like that. Now, the one good thing in shooting in manual mode is that if your conditions stay the same, the settings will be exactly as you left them. So if you get a good exposure and you really like it, you just leave your settings alone and keep shooting at that setting. Everything's there ready to go. It's just a bit awkward and a bit tricky when things start to change and when they change quickly. So there's a building and a tree right over there. There's sunlight coming through. I'm just waiting for it to hit that sunlight. I need to get my settings right. So shutter speed, drop the shutter speed down. Oh, it's on it, it's on it, it's on it. This wind is just ridiculous. Look at this. Now this looks like one of the entrances into the mine system. I'm not going to go in there, and I wouldn't suggest it to anyone unless you're going with a guide. But this is a prime example of when you might want to use ISO to just kind of see what's in there, or where there's a really dark situation or a dark place. You want to photograph it, you can use your ISO. Not wanting to get too technical, all this does is just amplify the signal coming off your sensor. I know there's a lot more to it than that, but that's just keeping it as simple as possible. Now, if I go over here and I have a look inside, it's really dark and spooky. So with those settings, say for instance, I'm shooting at 28, so 30 is probably my lowest shutter speed. I'm at f2.8 already, so I just want to raise the ISO. See, I'm overexposing the outside, but when I poke it inside, now there's something really eerie about that. So if I just look at the settings I was using, 1/30th of a second, f2.8, ISO 10,000. So in boosting that signal by raising the ISO level, it's basically able to see in the dark. And I think I could probably get a lot more detail out of that shot as well. But yeah, fascinating that people used to go in there and work. Unbelievable. Another thing you can do in manual mode is to shoot panos. Those settings aren't going to change, so if you focus on one point and leave the focus there by switching it to manual, you can shoot a series of images and they'll all have exactly the same exposure, and then you can stitch them together in a panorama. Now it's absolutely fantastic from up here. You've got the lake, you've got all the mine workings, you've got all the bits where they were obviously tipping the waste out into the lake, and the views just are ridiculously good. I'm going to try and get a panorama from up here once that sunlight and those sunbeams come through, but this will be just a waiting game and trying not to get cold. Although saying that, look at the light beam coming through now. No, missed it that time. Yeah, definitely missed it that time. But that view down there is fantastic. See what we can get there. Again, I'm just playing around with the settings. I'm going to shoot to f8, close my shutter speed down. So we'll just have to wait for that sunlight to come through, shine on this landscape, and hopefully get a nice panorama. So here we have another way in. So you can see how extensive this mine system was. So many of these things. So you can see the tracks coming along here where they would have had the carts full of slate and full of stone. And then all of these bits on the outside, that's where they would have dumped them all. I'm not going in there, but I'm going to take a photograph. And again, I'm going to utilize the ISO. I'm going to bump it up loads and then we'll be able to see inside. We'll get a bit closer, but not too much without standing in mud. Wow, you can see that just goes on and on. That's a deep mine system. If you haven't already noticed, I absolutely love exploring places like this. It's amazing to see that people used to work here and you're kind of exploring these old ruins and these old places where people used to live and work and unfortunately used to die as well. Now I've looked at the clock. I think I'm going to go up to the top on the other side because there's something that I want to show you over there, which is on another level of fantastic. Now that would look fantastic if the light was hitting that building, but hey, you can't have everything. By walking around on the surface, you can really see how extensive this mine actually was. There's so many inlets, so many places where the mines would walk in. I think they're called levels. If that's wrong, and if you want to correct me, let me know in the comments below. But I'm going to call them levels for now. But yeah, there's a load of these levels coming out at lots of different places. And yeah, it's just fantastic. So much to photograph. Wow. Wow, look at that. It's just crazy looking at the vastness of it. You look out into the valley, you can see other quarries and other mines with the slag heaps like this one that they were dumping out all the waste material. Just waiting for another bit of light to come through. I want it to light the buildings down the bottom and have dark, moody mountains in the background and obviously those dark, moody skies. It's coming. There we go. Wow, look at that. That's it. So, with a bit of patience, I got the shot I was looking for. Now at this top point, there's loads of big chunks of metal work. Obviously they couldn't get them down or they were too corroded, like this big reel of cable. But there's a hole in the ground and this dips off and goes down. And then if you look at it from the other side, there's like a ramp that goes straight down. And again, if you come to somewhere like this, it's just so much to photograph. And what you can do in places like this is really widen the aperture and get those shallow depth of field shots. On this lens, the 28-200, at 28, I can open it to f2.8. And then I'm going to compensate with the other two settings. So let's have a look how we can get this. Or maybe from this side. Yeah, from there. I'm going to get as close as possible. So what I did there, and you're getting very wet. Another waterfall scenario, we're gonna have to go somewhere else. Now in true Welsh weather style, the rain's properly come in just as I was taking a photograph of that cog. You've even got the tracks coming in still. And I'm not gonna go in too far, but down here, it goes really steep, really quickly. Wow, that goes properly steep. I'm not going down there. Wow. Now I am just sheltering from the rain in here. You can probably hear how echoey it is. But I'm going to take a few photographs in here. You've obviously got all the holes of the drilling points where they hammered out by hand, put explosives in there and blew out this. It's unbelievable to see what humans are actually capable of. The rain looks like it's kind of stopping. It's unbelievable. It's crazy. At this point, I did get a bit carried away, but the point I was trying to make was that you can open up your aperture by reducing your f number. You then get close to the subject and blur out the background. And I don't know if you can see it. There's a rainbow. I did get a photo of it, but it's not a very good one. When you are photographing rainbows, use a polarizer if you can and rotate it. You'll find that at one point, the rainbow will really stand out. Now that's what I should have done here. There's one other thing that I want to talk to you about, and that's shutter speed. And the best thing to take photographs of to get an idea of what shutter speed does is take some photographs of waterfalls. Now, when you're in front of something that moves, like a waterfall, it's great to play around with those shutter speeds. I've been taking a lot of different shots between half a second and a sixth of a second, and when the sun comes out, faster shutter speeds. But you can play around with your shutter speeds and then compensate with your aperture and your ISO. I've set it to ISO 50, I've got it at f16, and I'm at 1/5 of a second. So that's really blurring out that water. Now, if I wanted to freeze the water, maybe at 1/640th of a second, I'd have to change the other settings to suit. So I've changed it to ISO 200, f2.8, so you can really see the difference between those, between the slower shutter speeds and the faster shutter speeds, and how it affects your photographs.